Hey guys, and welcome to the Path to Exile podcast, partnered with Mobalytics. I am your host, Caltrops, and this is our first episode. Joining me every week will be my co-hosts, Miso Shiro and Dead Rabbit. But before we get fully into introductions, let's talk about how this podcast started. I love podcasts, and whenever I have a passion or a hobby, it kind of consumes my life. And I was missing podcasts desperately in this game. There are some of them are consistent, but for the most part, when you get a podcast, it's about once every 4 months when a new league happens. Sometimes they'll do a post-mortem podcast, but really we're just missing people who play the game frequently and talk about it a lot. And I had noticed that when I was watching Miso and Dead Rabbit, and that they were constantly going on these long-form rants almost about things about the game that I either agreed with or disagreed with. And that's when we reached out to each other, we got the podcast going, and then a couple weeks later, very quickly, I mind you, we all really wanted to get this out. Here we are with episode 1 of our podcast. It's going to be pretty cool. We're going to talk about a lot Path of Exile 2 specifically, but it's not just going to be about the game and like patch notes and stuff. We are 3 build makers. We're going to have heavy emphasis on build making, but specifically as well, the community. We're going to be showcasing community builds, hopefully every single episode, and we will be showcasing some at the end of today's episode. But before we just get fully into all the Path of Exile 2 topics, we are on Miso Shiro's channel, but some of you might not know him because you're fans of me or Dead Rabbit, or you might not know me or Dead Rabbit because this is Miso's channel. So we're just going to quickly run through some introductions, who we are, how we got into gaming, how we got into ARPGs and PoE 2, and content creation and whatnot. So Miso, take it away, man.
For sure. Thanks for the setting me up. But guys, Miso Shiro, Path of Exile 2 content creator. I've been making content for Path of Exile 2 since I guess the launch of early access. Before that, my main game that I streamed and made content for was for Lost Ark. So I guess I got my start with content creation in the MMO space. Still a big fan of MMOs, so I'll probably play any big MMO that comes out, as long as it doesn't conflict with any Path of Exile seasons. But I started playing ARPGs all the way back with, well, not all the way back. Actually, I didn't play ARPGs very, very early on compared to a lot of people. A lot of people, I feel like, started with like D2. I did not play D2. I played D3 as my first ARPG, but I also did play Path of Exile since the beta on and off. So I got that nice little Kiwi badge on my profile. But, played D3, fell in love with the genre, played Path of Exile, had a good time, and, continued on playing more and more and more. And while I would say that, for me, both MMOs and ARPGs are kind of like the 2 genres of games that I really, really enjoy playing. But, looking forward to having a successful and fun podcast series with these 2 boys, and sharing that with y'all and having good discussions.
I'm kind of the same. Hello, it's me. I'm me. It's Dead Rabbit, I think. No, I'm kind of the same. I would say I was kind of thinking about what I would say what my gaming career looked like, and I always just get back to I'm kind of a Blizzard child. I would say I was born in 1991. So I was in the ripe age of like 12, 13 years old when all the Blizzard games had their like big hurrah. So one of my first games actually ever that I played on a PC was Diablo 2. So I still remember, I think Diablo 2 LOD released in 2002. So I was around 11, 12 years old at that stage. And that was my first actual PC game that I ever played. My parents weren't really into full like PC stuff. But a friend of mine, whose dad was a big Blizzard fan at that stage, had Diablo 2. So we saw it there, and he made us play Diablo 2 with him. So that was actually my first experience. And I never really stopped playing Diablo 2 at any point. I only really stopped playing Diablo 2 when Path of Exile 2 came out. So in my opinion, Path of Exile 2 is the spiritual successor to Diablo 2. I think Blizzard couldn't really do that. Other than that, I'm the same as Miso. I played a lot of World of Warcraft, but when I was younger, I played a lot of Warcraft 3. I played all the Blizzard games before it went into the Diablo 4 space. Played a lot of Diablo 3 as well. I love ARPGs. I love any game that has a min-maxing build aspect, if there's an economy on top of that, I'm just sold. So you can probably already see why I love PoE 2 so much, or why I love PoE 1 so much, and I love Diablo 2 so much. So yeah, this is just natural to me. I have high hopes. Yeah,
Dude,
that
Warcraft,
is.
Warcraft was so good. Warcraft was so good. I played a lot of
Yeah.
Warcraft
I
RPSs.
played Undead Ladder all day.
Ooh,
Sometimes
the
2v2. My
grind.
friend played Night Elf.
You're a rat.
I played
You're a
Undead.
rat. You're a rat.
What? What?
No surprises from an Abathur main.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, I told you, I did the mistake yesterday that I told you that I played mostly Arbiter on Heroes of the Storm. Yeah. I should also say, I think it's pretty similar to all of us. I think we all kinda have the same inclination of playing games that are massively multiplayer online. I think that is pretty clear. I'm gonna get like shit tons of hate for this, but I never really played any single player games. I haven't played Elden Ring. I haven't played Witcher. I don't know. Like,
That's
there's
fine.
probably so many games that people in chat would be like, "Oh my god, I never played any single player games."
Zeldas, any of those, any Nintendo stuff?
Final Fantasy VII. That was probably the first game I ever played on the PlayStation 1, because I found a PlayStation 1 at the side of the road when I was like 7 years old. I know, hard to believe. And a friend had Final Fantasy VII. That is probably the only single player game I ever really played for more than 100
hours. On the
hours.
side of the road, and it just worked.
The PlayStation 1, yeah, I did. It was just a PlayStation 1, no cables, nothing. And then, yeah, my parents weren't really that big into video games, so I had to fight for it. And yeah. But yeah, Final Fantasy VII. I think other than that, I always needed multiplayer. I always needed that. I always needed at least the glimpse of having like other people in the game with you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm mostly the same. I have a huge multiplayer background. I call myself like a Generation 2 gamer. That's like I'm born 90, a year before you. So like that, I call our Generation 2 gamers the ones that hit that first wave of real good games from like Blizzard and stuff. My dad's a Generation 1 gamer. He's the ones that grew up on like Pong and then like arcade games, and eventually got the first console and stuff. So from the moment I like have consciousness, I remember playing games. So I've played like so many different game genres, but I very much was a Blizzard gamer. I grew up, I remember him playing Warcraft 1 on his laptop. He had a laptop for work that could run the game. So I remember him playing Warcraft 1. I was immediately playing Warcraft 2, playing Diablo 1 I remember having nightmares about the Butcher and my mom yelling at my dad about it, like not letting me watching him play that game and stuff. So I've been playing those games for the longest time. I've always liked ARPGs, but I've never been like an ARPG enthusiast. It's always like around an ARPG I come and go, like maybe for a week or two. I've always been mostly an online or competitive type gaming. Around 2010, I got very involved in esports. I started off with StarCraft Brood War, eventually transitioning to StarCraft 2. I used to compete and eventually started doing commentary, coaching, observing. I started doing work for MLG, DreamHack, eventually transitioned over to Heroes of the Storm, where I started doing commentary, eventually started a podcast there. It was called Town Hall Heroes. We did like hundreds of episodes and ended up going to like BlizzCons and stuff for that. I very much have a multiplayer and like almost a competitive gamer background. I almost prefer competitive games. I would say my favorite genre right now is games like Dark and Darker, where they're like looter shooters, where you got PvE elements, but there's also the constant. Dark and Darker is in an awkward state, but there's other games around like it that are similar genre. But I don't know, I really like PvP games. So it's very rare that a game. I was big into Lost Ark. Actually, the first time I saw Miso Shiro ever was his Lost Ark content forever ago. When Lost Ark first came to the North American servers. Oh yeah. That's part of the reason why I was hyped whenever I saw you feature one of my videos in your shorts. I was like, oh yeah, it's that Lost Ark guy. Like I remember you from back in the day. So I was playing Lost Ark when it first came out, mainly because of the MMO aspect of it. I'm big into MMOs. I mean, my channel's almost like got all of its popularity from making WoW videos when Season of Discovery came out. So it's very rare for me to be this into an ARPG, and Path of Exile 2, I've already put over 2,000 hours into Steam. I work from home, so a lot of that is like, sitting in my stash trying to sell stuff throughout the day. But
and you're calling me an idol warrior.
You could call me an idol warrior, yeah, or a hideout warrior, yeah.
Okay,
There's a lot of AFKing
we're all the
throughout the
same,
day. We're all the same, man. Yeah, but this game has scratched an itch for me, which not even like other ARPGs, other games haven't done, which I guess transitions, into the next topic is, what is it about PoE2 that has really stuck to you guys? Like I said, I've just played 2,000 hours. In Dawn of the Hunt alone, I checked yesterday, I have 14 characters in endgame. Some of them are the same class I've leveled multiple times. I've leveled 3 Warbringers for some reason. I'm just super into this game right now, despite how unfinished it is, despite how bad it is in so many ways. Bad. There's something about this game that it is just drawing us all in. Part of it to me is that it's a blank canvas in a sense, that there is so much undiscovered. So like there's so much every day you're learning something new that's like, oh hell yeah, this just changed 3 of my builds in the past. But for me specifically, what does it to me is definitely the combat. There is, whenever you're doing I call them balanced builds, that don't one-shot bosses, where you actually get to see all the phases and the mechanics. When you're doing, and it's a skill that is well designed, that has a good feel to it, the combat in this game is better than any other ARPG, like by far, in a way. Like it doesn't matter. Like obviously there's some really clunky stuff to the game, but when you're in it, when it's working as it should, and you picture what it's going to be in 2 to 3 years, that's where I get sucked in. It's mainly the combat for me, though. Like, obviously, there's a lot of things that need work and that aren't perfect, but for me, it's the combat. That's why I am so sucked in. It's like I just look at it in its future. I'm just like, I don't see any other ARPG coming close to it without like a serious overhaul.
Yeah. No,
I think that's
go
Miso.
You.
I think that's kind of exactly the point that I've been making a lot of the times on my stream as well. I've been using the metaphor over and over again. People who watch my stream will probably be annoyed at this point that I use this metaphor over and over again. But I think, honestly, talking like foundation of a game, and I'm a big ARPG guy, and just strictly speaking ARPGs, I personally have never seen a foundation of a game that is this good. There are obvious and glaring problems, and there are obvious things that need to be improved. And we are going to talk about those things. But I think it is very, very important to realize in what stage we are at this game right now, and how good the foundation here actually is. And I've used this metaphor over and over again. I'd rather have a good foundation and an unfinished house on top of that good foundation, rather than an unfinished foundation and we hastily build a house on top of that, and that house is crumbling in the next 6 months and the house is gone. And I'd rather have it this way, that there's stuff to improve on the house rather than the foundation. And just like you said, I think the combat is amazing. The game feels amazing to play when there's no server issues and when the performance is actually going. The game just feels amazing. It looks amazing. The sound design is amazing. The bosses, as on the stage that we are right now, I would like to have some more variety in the end. We need more of that. I just said earlier on stream today that my biggest wish is just more boss content and more hard boss content and more stuff to do when it comes to that. I want a 2-minute fight where I'm moving around, where I'm like dodging skills, where I'm like getting into the next phase, where the boss transforms, whatever. I want that. But I think at the stage we are right now, the foundation is just amazing. And that's why I am so hopeful. I am streaming and playing this game because I'm just so hopeful for the future of it. I'm not sure if I would be still playing it as religiously as I would be doing it right now, because there is a lack of things to do right now. But what I enjoy right now is just streaming the game and just having discussions like this, putting out content for the game, and just being ready for the future, and just going as we need. And like I said, this is not saying that there is not stuff. Obviously, there is stuff that needs improvement, and we like I said, we are going to talk about that. There is a lot of stuff actually that needs improvement.
I love the need that we always have to preface that, like we can't, like there's this stuff. There's always that inherent, like we can't glaze too hard because then people are gonna be like, they're not saying enough negative. Like I get what they need to say. Those
launching softballs
always
to Jonathan and stuff. The whole shit that Try got for his interview when he was not asking
funny.
the right questions to Jonathan and stuff. It's softball stand and you're glazing. So you always have to preface it like that. But yeah, like I said, I think foundationally the game is amazing.
Agreed.
I think it's gonna be like, we are gonna look back in a few years, I think, at this stage of the game and say like, oh damn, has it changed a lot, and how good is it now? Okay, sorry, Miso.
I mean,
I went on a rant.
No, and I think even not even like a few years later, like we're probably going to be seeing huge changes every single season. Like, I mean, I feel like there was a lot of changes between point 1 and point 2 with how the game felt, at least, especially at launch, for some better, some worse. But definitely the game's going to change a lot, even within early access. And then point 1.0 is probably going to look way different than what it is looking like right now. But I mean, just to agree with everybody, like the game just feels good to play. I always say this, right? I feel like Path of Exile 2, out of all the ARPGs, it just feels good to press the buttons compared to every single other ARPG. Like, of course, there's other ARPGs feel good to play too, but out of all of them, I think Path of Exile 2 feels the best to play, like press the buttons. The sound design, the animations, all of those really work together to actually make the game feel like a, just like a good game to play. I think that especially this was very, very apparent when I swapped over to LE. Nothing against LE, I like the game, but when I was playing LE during this season, it just didn't feel the same to press the buttons. It didn't feel the same to play the game. It just felt a little arcadey compared to Path of Exile 2, which, the skills really feel like they have weight to them. And every time you press some of these skills, it just feels very, very satisfying, to a point where I'm just like, I don't know if I could play any other ARPG as much as this one. It's just, it has the builds, has the feel, has the animations, has the new graphics, has WASD, which a lot of people say that they really can't play Path of Exile 1 because it doesn't have WASD. Everything just comes together and it feels super good.
Yeah, the weight to me, that's the word I use a lot too, is it's just immersion, I guess, is another word I would use. That weight helps me get immersed into the gameplay. When I'm playing other ARPGs, I almost call them, whenever you get the build like going to an extent, not even going, like sometimes it's just like 2 hours into gameplay. ARPGs almost turn into second monitor games, where you have to have, like, you're like almost watching something on the side while you're playing, because outside of like the pinnacle content, you don't need to really pay attention once you've got it mastered. And especially early on, the league starts in Path of Exile 2, there's a level of focus that is required for this game. And no matter, like, at least with the builds I do, I very rarely have fights that are tier 4 pinnacle arbiters that aren't at least 2 to 3 minutes. So when you play the game with my silly builds, you get a taste of what those longer fights can become. Obviously, the balance is kind of all over the place. But one thing Miso mentioned was that how we went from 0.1 to 0.2, there was these big change in gameplay. And that was one of the things I noticed, which was like, oh, okay, this jump means like the next jump and the next jump and the next jump. This game's going to be good at some point. But at one point early on, they promised us frequent patches. They did one patch. Specific people in the community had a meltdown over that, and GGD was like, oh, okay, we can no longer do mid-season nerfs. And then in 0.2, at some point, they said, okay, we're not going to do these nerfs anymore, but expect more frequent patches. And my problem is with the seasonal model right now. The game is not ready for even a 4-month seasonal model. That's why this one's almost going to be 5 months, almost 6, right? It's like 5.5 months. Like they kind of like stretched it a little longer, right? That's because the game's not ready for that. What the game needs is more frequent patches. And I mean, we've all been counting like, come on, we're 0.22, we're 0.22. What is your guys' thoughts, Miso? Let's start with you. What is your guys' thoughts on just the overall patch cadence and them trying to force this back-to-back 4-month cycle? I understand from a business perspective why they would want to have this back-to-back 4-month cycle, but do you think the game is ready for that? And where you're at on these patch cycles right now?
I mean, I understand the 4-month cycle. Like, if they, in a way, I feel like they're trying to treat, because I think a lot of the community, it feels like, treats Path of Exile 2 kind of like a full release game. So they kind of do want to treat it somewhat like a full release game, but with patches in between. Now, what I will say is I've always had this opinion since the beginning. I think that early access, you need to make changes. And the main issue with what happened with point one was that they made changes way too frequently, where it was like, I think it was within the first 3 days, they already nerfed something or so, if I remember correctly. It was just like way too frequent, way too often, and the nerfs came in hard. Now, do I agree with their stance of like, oh, we shouldn't do mid-season nerfs? I don't completely agree. I think again the problem was that it just came way too fast, way too often, and that's what felt really bad. But if they don't want to do nerfs, that's fine. I just think that right now they had it for a bit actually, where it was like it was like after the podcast with Ziz, right? They had all these things that they needed to work on, and they had a patch every couple days. At least one every week for a little bit, and then they just completely pressed the brakes and stopped. And I'm not sure if I like that. I would have much rather have them kept the cadence and kept updating things, even if they were smaller patches rather than bigger patches. But I think the biggest problem now is just that we haven't had an update for basically an entire month or so. And we need that. We need a little bit more life into the game, especially when it is early access. And a lot of people want to play Path of Exile all day. A lot of people want to play Path of Exile from the beginning to the end, but the constant tone is just like, we're out of content. We have nothing to do. And it makes sense. It's early access. There's going to be less content, which is why I think getting more of these updates more often is going to be good. And, they did promise us 0.22, at least Jonathan did on Try's podcast, after Path of Exile 1 was released and they can get their balance team back in shape. So, I would have liked to have seen something like that. And I'm still crossing my fingers, hopium, that we're gonna get something. Okay. But as it stands, I don't know. I'm a little bit more hesitant about it and saying that they're gonna bring something within the next couple of weeks. But I'm all for more updates. I'm all for more balance patches, more changes, especially early access. They need to be trying things, experimenting with things, changing things, just to keep the game fresh especially while there's not as much content in the game that we necessarily want.
Do you guys get the I'm tired of hearing that early access excuse. Like, what do you mean early access excuse? They're in early access. It's not an excuse. Like, I get that comment so much every time I mention early access. Like, how long are they going to be able to use that until they say the game's finished and worthy of 1.0? Well, it's definitely early access to me. Rabbit, what are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I do think it kind of boils down. I think a lot of the frustration comes from that people kind of feel lied to at some stage, because whether you are a PoE 1 player or whether you are a PoE 2 player, both sides really seem to be getting a little bit of the short end of the stick a little bit, because both sides kind of feel like, oh yeah, we're getting left alone because of this other game, right? PoE 1 players are like, yeah, this I just saw a clip earlier today of a PoE 1 creator saying, yeah, this league is already boring, it's like 1 month in, this is so half-assed because they are probably working on PoE 2. On the other side, I see PoE 2 people saying the exact same thing for that exact same situation.
Really?
They're saying, yeah, PoE 2 is being left alone because they are doing like PoE 1, right? So it is definitely, I do think it boils down to there has been a little bit of miscommunication on their part. I do think so. I think they do realize that though. And I think they are just in a situation where it is going to be rough in the current stage that it is, or in the current development stage of PoE 2 and continuing on PoE 1. It is going to be tough to hold this and to actually provide content for both games on this regular cycle. I think they just didn't really know what they were getting into. I'm guessing, but in my opinion, that is something that will happen. It will always happen. I mean, you are a game developer yourself, Caltrops, so it is. It's always going to be like that. I have worked in many different jobs in my lifetime as well, where I was just like, oh, fuck, I got in over my head here. And it will just happen. I think their approach so far has been good. I do agree, though, that the radio silence we have been having, I'm just speaking from a PoE 2 point right now. it is obviously very bad for the game. The player retention, we are at the lowest stage of player count that we have ever been. And I do think this is due to us not knowing anything. A lot of people that have already quit don't really see a point in playing anymore, because why could you blame them for that? There's not really much to do. So if we would have had a 0.22 patch with balance changes again, if it would have been any close to the 0.21 patch, there would have probably been a much more live state in the economy right now, in the player state right now. It is just a situation that we're in right now. There is stuff that needs to be not like that in the future, and I don't think we're gonna get a 0.22. I was hopeful for a little bit. I just hope that the 0.3 update is gonna hit incredibly huge now. It has to have a much higher player retention rate than the one that we had here. And I think there are multiple reasons for why the player retention was this low for the Dawn of the Hunt League. I think the dominance of Lightning Spear, or the perceived dominance of Lightning Spear, was definitely a point where a lot of people got bored pretty quick. And also just lack of endgame content, I think, is also just something why the player retention was this bad, because I don't know, the league started in April. I think 1 month in, it was already looking pretty badly. And if then a PoE2 league comes on top of that, yeah, it's not looking good.
Can you define badly for me? Like what is are you comparing it to 0.1, or what exactly are your standards for badly? Because I don't actually look at the metrics to I'm isolated in my own little circle. I'm just playing my builds and I'm having fun. So what does badly mean to you?
I just think that a game like this, even in early access, I think it needs to be at a better player retention rate after 1 or 2 months than it is right now. And I think it's just something that is a sign for a game's healthiness, in my opinion. That how many players are still playing a game like this, which is a game that is meant to be played for hundreds and hundreds of hours every few months. If the dip is as hard as it was for this league, it's definitely something to look at, I would say. I'm obviously I'm basically defending a position here that I personally don't hold, because I'm still playing it every day for 8 hours. So
next episode I'm gonna make sure we get. I want to compare the dip from this league to 0.1 might not be a good point. Maybe 3.26, because 0.1 was like add extra hype to it because it was the launch of the game, right? So there's going to be a little bit of an extra boom and sustained length there. But I'm curious maybe how I'll compare to 0.3. Miso, any last thoughts on this? One thing you did say that I wanted to talk real quick on is you mentioned that the lying that they do, and lying, to me, it's never like lying. I do the same thing as I have the same job as Jonathan does at my job, and it all comes from excitement. It's just like you want this to happen at this time, and you think it will happen, and they're never misleading. It just comes from them being too excited and them not having realistic goals and expectations for themselves. I still think to this day, like right now, it is unrealistic for them to expect themselves to do a league every 4 months for both games. That is ridiculous. They're not going to be able to sustain that for probably another year in my mind. So I just feel like they're not being. If they're lying to anybody, it's to themselves. They're not actively lying to the community. They're lying to themselves, and they believe they are being honest with their goals and expectations. But I feel like they're just a little too excited about the game, which who wouldn't be, working on this game. Sorry, Miso.
No, and I mean, part of that I do think might come from the fact that a lot of these interviews are probably unscripted. Like they don't get handed these questions and then like they get vetted and then, whatever. Like we've clearly seen podcasts in the past where Jonathan has been like, yeah, I don't know if I want to answer those types that question anymore. He's clearly had a little bit of a sour face when certain questions get asked, and he just glazes over the question a little bit. So it definitely comes from a side of like you said, excitement, but then also partly like with these podcasts, they aren't necessarily, Jonathan and Mark are, from my perspective, pretty transparent with a lot of things, and they talk about all like their successes as well as like failures and things like that. So I think that a large part of it is that excitement and transparency that they have with the community, where these kind of pieces of communication do come in and these issues do happen. But overall, in terms of like the retention stuff, I think it just makes it like, hopefully this league will be an exception, because I think that there was a huge fall off at the beginning when Dawn of the Hunt came out and people were not happy. And there was that huge bubble of just like negative, negative commentary from all the big content creators, and like a lot of the community chimed in and made like a big echo chamber. And even from like, if you're a casual player looking in, you're seeing all these people being unhappy. People are going to get swayed by the opinions, even if they might not think so. So I think there was just like a kind of a perfect storm at the beginning of the league that caused these issues to really happen and caused retention to really suffer.
Yeah. I remember talking about that. I'm glad you said that, because I remember I made a video early on. I don't consider Dawn of the Hunt a league, and if I recall, GGG didn't consider Dawn of the Hunt a real league themselves. Wisp weren't a league mechanic. There was just an economy reset with a 0.2 patch, but in terms of it being a real league, like there was no new endgame content added in this patch except for like a few new maps having different endgame bosses, which was like the two witches fighting each other and stuff. But there was zero new Pinnacle content, and a majority of that Pinnacle content got nerfed to make it easier to access. So in terms of like it being a league, like it was not a league. It was just an economy wipe. So 0.2 definitely it had different, like it had bigger expectations going into it, and there was just no, like there's nothing new to do in it. If you had already done the end game and you're a one build person, when you got to end game in Dawn of the Hunt and you had just full cleared the Atlas in 0.1, it's the exact same Atlas in 0.2. You got to kill Breach Bosch 4 times. You got to clear Simulacrum 4 times. Like that. Okay, and then you got to kill Arbiter 4 times. Mixed in with like the fact that this league is just the inflation we have reached at this point. Like I don't know if you've heard this term before. My viewers call it the Malthus effect. Whenever like you do a random build and then like the items in its price skyrocket. It's happened to me quite a few times. In Dawn of the Hunt, it's happened to me twice. It happened to me and Rabbit when we did the Vertex build. That was like a 1 Exalt item. We both released builds with I think Ulf at the same time using that helmet, and that went from 1 Exalt to like 40 Divines. And then with my Arctic Armor build, that was a 1 Exalt Prism of Belief, and now it's 60 Divines. So like right now, the inflation is just like if there was a 0.22 patch right now with like a huge balance rework, if you were someone coming back, you would not be able to afford anything, because I cannot afford anything, and I quit forever ago. I got 23 Divines in my name right now. I can't afford anything that's good. So there's a lot of factors with this league, and I'm there's a lot going on with 0.22, but I don't know if I would call it an actual league though myself, because nothing changed. It was a build maker's paradise. This is why we played so long, is because it changed every single build at its core and then gave us a bunch of new builds. So it was really just a way for us to like have fun, us specifically being build makers. But I get why so many others quit really quickly, because it was relatively the same game.
Mm-hmm. And I think with the inflation part of things, it really, a big part of it had to do with the patch that we had in between, where it kind of buffed a lot of the drop rates, and that kind of made the inflation feel even worse. And I think I would compare that we used to have exalts pretty much as the main currency, I guess, like the standard. Later in the league, you'll shift to chaos, but then with that big shift, I think that exalts really feel like alks from PoE1 now, whereas chaos now for both games are probably going to be the standard, and we'll probably see that reflected and feel a little bit better in terms of inflation next league. Yeah, Rabbit, you were saying?
I think that's a good point. How I had a little bit of a not like controversial opinion on that whole thing about like patching the unique drop rates. I don't know. You said earlier, Caltrops, that we're playing a little bit different games, so I would be interested in your guys' opinion on that one as well. I don't think that was a good change. I don't think that was a good change. any T0, for me, always the root of every ARPG for me is loot hunting. I think for me, ARPGs have always been dopamine receptor hitters. It should always be exciting to loot certain stuff. I'm pretty sure they're going to go back on those changes because having every single unique in the game being basically worthless, except if it's vault in a good way, or if it's actually something that is not farmable like that, like Temporalis, for example. In my personal opinion, that is very bad. I lost a lot of motivation for mapping, for like general loot hunting in general when that thing hit, because Calandra's Touch is 4 divines now, I think. I think Calandra's Touch is like 1 div probably now. There's the first day that the change happened, there were 40 Calandra's Touch on the trade side, I think. I think 4 hours later was the 1,000 over 1,000. So I don't know if they messed something up with that patch, but I think rare loot, especially T0 unique, should be rare. I don't know if that's a controversial opinion. I don't personally think so. Yeah, I get that it's much better if you're a casual player. If you're an SSF player, it's much easier now to maybe even target certain builds because the uniques are much more accessible now. But as someone who's playing the game mainly as like a loot hunter, and I want my dopamine, and I want to be like, oh my god, I dropped an Astrumentus. If I play right now and I drop an Astrumentus right now, there's no excitement, unfortunately, and I think that takes away a lot from what an ARPG should be. I'm pretty sure they're gonna go back on that, though. I would be interested in what you guys think as guys who are not as degenerate as me. I would say.
I'm pretty degenerate. I do agree with one thing you said, that when the patch came out, there felt like an almost immediate less need to grind. I do have those like white whale items, and for me it was always Chernobog Shield. Chernobog was it scales perfectly with all my reflect builds. It works like it's the more damage modifier, so it just works perfectly with Scavenge Plating and Thorns. And to me, it was always my dream Thorns item, right? I always wanted a Chernobog, and in 0.2, I didn't think I was ever going to get one because I was sitting at about 60 divine for a bad one, and it was like 200 divine for a good one. And you're going to want a good one with my build. And so that was always like a chase item for me. It's like one day you're going to have like that big pop-off moment where I finally get my first Chernobog, and then I get to have this crazy league where I use Chernobog. And then they released this patch, and it was 1 divine that day. And I got to play with Chernobog in 50 builds. So that dopamine, I promise you, I'm not lying when I say this. There was initial sadness with that. I was like, oh, I already got my chase unique. Okay, but then I got to use that unique in 7 builds this league. So when I think about it from a game designer's perspective, if I was GGG, having these uniques have a lower drop rate right now means there are more people like me, you, Miso, who are build creators who are going to balance test these builds for us. Because I was not testing Chernobog before. There are plenty of uniques like Calandra's Trust I would never be able to test before. There's still some that I can't test, but I think it depends on what their thought process was with the increased drop rate. Were they wanting to get it into more people's hands so we can test them from a balanced design point? Then that makes sense, and then I agree that it will be reverted. But I agree with everything you basically just said. That Chernobog was my like white whale. Like that's the pinnacle Thorns item. You get a Chernobog with a Vow with a high block chance. That is the perfect Thorns item. And now it's super common. Maybe that's how it should be. I don't know, but I did have that chase item, and I stopped grinding. The moment that patch came out, I stopped doing my divine hunt because that was my big chase for divines. That was the reason I was logging in and spamming maps every day, was because I wanted my Chernobog and I was going to see, is this the league I was going to be able to afford it? And I have not been grinding maps. I've been making new characters since that patch. It's just like, well, now let's just try out all the new builds and stuff. I agree with both of what you just said. I do hope that they revert some of them. But it just depends on their logic, because I do think that, like, I've tested so many new builds since that patch. So
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it really is just about. I think for me, it really is about like a balance. Like, I think that you can see both sides of the coin, where it's like some people are like, hey, because Path of Exile is kind of trying to be that game that caters a little bit more to at least every type of person playing the game and trying to open it up to these more newer players, more casual players. So it makes sense that they want some of these items to be obtainable. And at the end of the day, it's, I think, about finding that sweet spot, right? Maybe this league they buffed it a little bit too much, so next league they'll move it a little bit back more. I agree that you shouldn't have items where you're basically never going to get them, but at the same time you do want chase items. And I think at the same time we also might have a little bit of recency bias as well, where right now in the state of like inflation, it's the end of the league, there's a lot of items in the market, and that makes certain items that were expensive a lot cheaper. I do remember Headhunter actually getting more expensive actually after that buff. And then now it's way cheaper. Astramantis also didn't drop like a significant amount at the beginning, right when that patch dropped. And then now it's way cheaper. I think hopefully we'll see a little bit more about how it actually shapes up to be in 0.3, and maybe they will do some adjustments during that patch as well. We'll have to see, but it really is, I think, a balance of finding the middle ground where you are going to have these chase uniques that do feel good to find, but at the same time, you're going to have people who can actually obtain them by playing a normal amount of hours, as opposed to us degenerates who are playing the game so much every single day.
I just think Diablo 2 had it down. I think why most people still... I know I am going back to Diablo 2. I hate it too.
I imagine this is going to be a reference point a lot on this podcast. So, yeah. Diablo 2.
I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm gonna
Don't
keep
be sorry
as well.
Don't be sorry.
I just think that, and I think a lot of people at GGG think the same as I will say right now. I think the loot system in Diablo 2 is probably the most perfect any loot system in any ARPG has ever been. Because I played Diablo 2 for 20 years. I did the Holy Grail challenge. I did everything. It was always in that certain spot where you did get some of the items that you were looking for. Like, I don't know if you guys played Diablo 2, but there was stuff like Tyrell's Might, Griffin's Eye, like stuff that was super, super rare. But you still, for some reason, every few months or every few leagues or something, Diablo had a seasonal approach as well. Every few ladder resets, you had at least that 1 or 2 or 3 moments every few weeks where you did get a Stone of Jordan, or where you did get a Griffin's Eye or whatever. And it was always, I can't really put it into like factual statements, but it just felt perfect in a way that it was rare enough to not be unexciting when you actually got it, but still was every single time, but you still had the experience, if that makes sense. And if they can find that balance, and I think they are on their way, I think it was probably just a test and they wanted to see. And I have kind of the inkling that they did already adjust a little bit on the unique drops in the back end, because a lot of people have been saying in my stream that on the first few days it seemed insane. They were dropping T0 uniques like every few hours or whatever, and now it already seems a little bit lower, but of course the effect is still felt on the trade side. So if they manage to find that balancing at some point that my favorite game of all time had, it's gonna be amazing. And I think a lot of GGG, and it's very apparent what this game is modeled after. I think they are looking for that too, and that is also why I'm very hopeful. Because why not look at a game that it's still alive after 20 years?
Yeah,
more than 20 years.
Last week I had this moment where this exact like dopamine just like turn off happened to me last week, where I was doing a Citadel map and then I dropped a Headhunter and a Alpha's Howl, like basically back to back. I'm like, oh my god, this is crazy! I finally got in some money. I'm always poor, and then I check the trade side, and they're like two divine, 3 divine. I'm like, god damn it. And then it has the
You gotta hit it with the Val Orb.
I did, and it didn't do well.
Well, yeah. Should we move on though on the topic? Probably, right?
Yeah, let's talk about Dawn of the Hunt now. This was just our general thoughts on PoE 2, but Dawn of the Hunt, what are your guys' thoughts on Dawn of the Hunt as a whole, looking back on the league? When I look back on it and the balance overhaul, people say that the build diversity is a problem in this league. To me, the build diversity leveled up so much from 1 to 2 that, like, as a build creator who's like done so many builds, like there's still so many I haven't tested yet. Obviously it's not as good as PoE 1 and these other games, but I had a lot of fun with this league. I do think that if that balance patch that released that fixed the drop rates, if that was what 0.2 had launched with, this league would have had a much different reception. It's hard looking back on Dawn of the Hunt because that first month of the league was utter chaos. My comments were just full of like the most insane hate watchers of not me, of Path of Exile 2. It's just like every big creator was blasting the state of the game, and then it was just chaos. To me, the game never felt that bad. I've always had fun with it for the most part, and I felt like if we had a fresh economy with the 0.21 patch, this league would have had a much different reception. What are your guys' thoughts on the state of Dawn of the Hunt, looking back on it?
Go ahead, Rabbit. You can start.
I can start. We definitely had like just staying in the lane of like build diversity. I think we definitely went off to a rough start. I do agree that if we would have started with the 0.21 patch, which fixed a lot of the problems that were very apparent in the start of the Dawn of the Hunt League, but they were just too late. The 0.21 patch was already at a stage where most people were already like gone, waiting for the PoE 1 league and stuff. If we had launched with that, like you said as well, I think the league would have looked massively different. Not only the unique item drop changes, but also the new uniques we've gotten. I think there were a few in there that really show what they are wanting to go for in the future with some of the new uniques. And it would have definitely opened up build diversity. It is, of course, it is not a hot take to say here that Lightning Spear was the dominant factor in all of this league here, and what made people so adamant about, oh, there's only one build you should play, or this is just the only build that anyone could play. Yes, it is a very good build. I was thinking about doing like a funny tier list of builds. Yes, it is an S+ tier build. The build diversity in this league is actually really good. It is extremely, extremely good. In 0.1, there were not even half the builds where you could easily do all content with a certain investment or whatever. Not even half. People still say that in 0.1, for some reason, the build diversity was more. I heavily disagree. In 0.1, there was Sparks. The Spark dominance was high. There was Tempest Flurry. And there was a few more, yes. But the build diversity in here is so much better. If in the 0.2 patch, the build diversity would be less than the previous patch, I would be worried about the state of the game. I would be worried if we take steps backwards, actually, in terms of build diversity. That would be very, very bad. I hope that at 0.3, we will have even more build diversity. And then in 0.4, we have more build diversity. And then in 0.5, we have more build diversity. That is how the game is supposed to go. If you're saying there's no build diversity and Lightning Spear is the only build you can play to actually have fun playing the game, that is extremely wrong. I'm sorry. It is very wrong. Me alone, I have made, I don't know how many, 10 plus very different builds this league. Some of them I did myself. Most of them were inspired by other builds and stuff. And I had a build inspired by your Wind Dancer build, where I went for the Fire Dancer approach, the one, for example. And
I call that Frankenstein builds, you know. You take
exactly.
Aspects from other areas.
There was so much build diversity. There is still much more to go. It is absolutely. I think that problem not relies on like there's no build diversity. It's just that everyone wants to play the best build, and I get that. Everyone wants to play the best build, and if you just want to open up the game, you want to one-shot T4 Zesh, and you want no problems doing T4 Simulacrum. Yes, you go Lightning Spear. And I don't disagree with that you want to play the best build, but don't complain about build diversity then. The build diversity does exist. you can play Lightning Spear all you want, but the build diversity exists. You cannot play Lightning Spear and then complain about how there's no build diversity and the game sucks. No, you choose that you only want to play this build, and it's totally fine. I just chose not to play Lightning Spear because I'm a hipster. Like, it's fine. Everyone can do whatever they want. I just disagree with the notion that there's no build diversity just because one build is dominating.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I think you hit the nail on the head in saying that everybody wants to play the best build. And how I would describe it is Lightning Spear is the de facto best build this league, right? It's the best skill, best build. And the big difference between point 1 and point 2 is that in point 1, there were probably 3 or 4 best builds, as opposed to this season where there's one best build. But how I describe it is that Lightning Spear is a double S tier build or something like that, right? Yes. And then last season, the double S tier builds were probably like, like Ice Strike with the double Herald stuff. Like double Heralds in general just like carried last league. So if you played double Heralds on anything, it was kind of like an double S tier build. So basically Ice Strike, double Heralds. You had like the Spark stuff. You had the cast on whatever comets. You had basically like, I'd say probably like 3 to 5 double S tier builds, but like pretty much like 1 or 2 or maybe even 0 S tier builds, and then everything else was an E tier build or below. Whereas this season, I'd say there's 1 double S tier, but then there's like 10 plus S tier builds. So it's like at the tippy top where everybody likes to play, there's only 1 build, but right below that, there's actually a lot of build diversity that people aren't exploring. Which is why people feel like there's only 1 build, because everybody wants to play the double S tier build. And last season there were a couple of those, whereas this season there's really only 1. So I think that really is the reason why there is this huge discrepancy with people like us who are build makers, who have made these builds, who are trying out all this different stuff. So we can see that, hey, there's actually some builds out there that are actually really good, whereas a lot of the general population of who play Path of Exile 2 probably go online, just look for like best builds of, patch 0.2, best builds of Dawn of the Hunt, and they see Lightning Spear up there. They play that, and then they don't play anything else because, why would you play a build that's not met like the top tier? And I understand that. I have friends who are of the same mindset who say like, hey, there's only 1 build. Why would I not play something that's like the best? Why would I handicap myself and play something that's not the best? And to that, again, it's like what you guys said. Hey, it's your choice, right? If you only want to play the best build, do it. But then don't complain that there's, no build diversity if you're just volunteering to not play the second most optimal build or third most optimal build or something like that.
Yeah, that's my problem with the best discussion is it doesn't mean best. It means like highest mathematical number. To me, when I like the tier list discussions because it's the best way to at least kind of visualize what you mean. An S tier build, whether it's S- to S+ or S++, if it's an S rank, it can clear all content in the game. That is an S tier build to me. Now, if you think that you only want to play S++ builds and S- builds don't work for you, like to me that doesn't compute because an S- build will still one-shot all content. It's just not as crazy as like the S++ build. But to me, an S tier build is a build that can do tier 4 of everything. You can clear the entire game. There's not a single bit of content you can't do. And I think there are plenty of builds that qualify for that. But just ignoring that part of the conversation, I'm someone who I consider myself like most of my builds fall in the A tier range. It's very rare that I qualify one of my builds as an S tier range. Looking at 0.1 to 0.2 as an A tier Andy, we got so many more A tier builds. Like so many more yes, I agree completely with that of the dominant builds. It's really only Lightning Spear. Like if you can doing it on a budget at least. There are other builds that can compete. They're more expensive. Lightning Spear is very cheap. I think Lightning Arrow is very comparable. It's not as it does everything Lightning Spear does, right? Like I don't see them as any different in my head, but Lightning Spear is just so cheap. But as someone who runs in the A tier space usually, I think the amount of A tier builds more than quadrupled. So many really bad skills became viable up to like clearing tier 4 breast. Like an A tier build to me can clear most tier 3 to tier 4 builds, but struggles with Simulacrum. Simulacrum is like really hard for a lot of A tier builds usually because you have to invest so much into damage and stuff. And you have to sacrifice survivability. But to me, this game leveled up a lot in that A tier to B tier range. And when GGG says that they're going into 0.3 focusing on low tier builds, that just makes me even more excited because we're going to be start seeing like even like I love like doing the bad skills and making them good. So we're going to start seeing all those get buffed. That's like great news to me. But when you're talking about the A tier range and even the B tier range, I think a lot of builds did get leveled up as well. It's just there's just these people get trapped, I guess, in that mindset of they see that S+++, and they're like, well, nothing else is viable then because there's technically this gap between this and Lightning Arrow. So now Lightning Arrow is no longer viable, but they functionally, to me at least, operate the exact same way in what they can clear and can't clear, right? So that's a trap people put themselves into. If that's how you're going to look at the game, then yes, Lightning Spear is technically the only peak optimal build right now, but there are loads of builds in this game that can clear everything the exact same rate, the exact same power. It's just like, 40 million damage difference, but it's still one-shotting everything with the same survivability, right? So, I don't know. To me, it's not perfect. There's plenty of really bad skills. Like, there's so many really bad skills. But it's not as bad as 0.1. It leveled up a lot to me.
Yeah, Hex Blast, terrible.
Yeah,
Hex Blast is one that went down for sure.
I was planning for this league. My league starter was supposed to be a Chaos like build, and it ended up being a Chaos Lich with Essence Drain and Contagion. And when that Hex Blast thing hit, I was that is the one where I was very, very confused. Because that just took away something that wasn't even good before, and it would have been so amazing for the build. The build ended up as being amazing anyway. But yeah, that was one where I was really confused about their decision making. And there's so much, like you said as well, there's still so many abilities and weapon skills that have untouched or untouched potential like that. And it's going to be exciting to see. One other thing that I wanted to say on the Lightning Spear topic, there is always going to be a case for every single league where one build is going to be chosen by the community as the best build. Like as soon as one of the large now PoE1 but also like part-time PoE2 creators are going to be choosing as this is the actual build right now, it is always going to be the case. People don't want to feel like they're wasting their time, so they don't want to they don't want to do the work. They want to put into Google. They want to put in. I see it on my YouTube statistics as well. The most searched thing on YouTube builds or on PoE2 builds is always the most SEO thing is always going to be PoE2 best build. That is the most searched thing on YouTube, and I don't fault people for that. You don't have the time most of the time to invest like I do for like actually searching out builds, trying to find my own way, popping for like 3 hours for the Thor Mjölner build. Literally, that's why I said that in the video for the Thor build. I was locked in the kitchen for the last 12 hours. I get that people don't have the time. People don't want their time wasted. So they want to Google best build and they want to play the build. That is always going to be a factor. It was just a little bit too much this league with Lightning Spear being this good. You basically only need Tangle Tongue and then you're good. But yeah, it's just another.
We'll talk about Tangle Tongue later. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We got a crit topic later. We're gonna go ham on Tangle Tongue at some point.
Yeah, but overall, I mean, I think that this league was. It was off to a rocky start, but if we had, like you guys said, right, if we had gotten 0.21 as our league start, I do think that this league probably would have felt in people's minds a lot better. I think overall people felt that this league probably a lot of people leaning more on the negative side, but I think if we just take out that beginning portion and start looking at like the post Zizarin podcast patches, I think this league was actually a pretty good league.
Agreed. So just really quickly, so if we were to get a 0.22, what is one thing you guys would want to see in that patch? Okay, don't obviously we got big changes coming for 0.3, but if there was to be a 0.22, some last Dawn of the Hunt filler patch, what is something that would get you grinding again?
For that patch, especially, sorry, Miso. For that patch, especially, it's going to be balance changes. I think if we would ask the same question for the 0.3 patch, I would say obviously more endgame content, more stuff for me to do in endgame. But for especially 0.22, it's just going to be balance changes. I want more skills to be better. I want you, Miso, to give it off to you at the next opportunity. You did a very, very good session of videos on YouTube over the past weeks, I think 2 weeks or something, where you did the shorts where you were discussing the abilities that need to be buffed. Basically, abilities that are in the game right now. They look cool, they feel cool to use, but no one is using them because they absolutely suck. And that needs to be a point of improvement 100%. And I kind of feel like I know from like as a non-game dev, it always feels super, super stupid to say stuff like that. But it kind of feels like an easy fix too. Just like make it better. You don't need to nerf, like Lightning Spear is probably gonna get nerfed, or most likely Tangle Tongue is gonna get nerfed or something. But what I want the most is just make the other stuff a little bit better. You don't need to nerf the top end that much. Make the other stuff better. Lift it up. So yeah, Miso.
I mean, 3 words: Spear of Solaris. I mean, yeah, it's the same thing. It's like overall just like buffing up some of these not as great skills. Jonathan did say that was supposed to be the focus of 0.22. Buffing up some of these skills, especially when we're thinking about his changed, I guess, outlook of making it so that some of these combo skills are actually more viable as standalone skills. So being able to just get better, more viable skills would get me really, really excited for, starting it back up again, and playing it a little bit more. Because right now, I don't know, I don't really have too much motivation because that's basically all I do. I make builds, and I feel like it's kind of in not so great of a spot right now for making cool builds because as much diversity as we say there was, it would be nice if there's more. That way, I've already identified the ones that I'm like, oh, these are the ones I'm super excited. And then the rest of them I'm not excited, even though they're viable. I'm not as excited to build them. If they add more skills that are viable, then I'd be like, oh, wow, there's this fresh pool of builds that I'm like, oh, I'm actually interested in playing these skills and making builds out of them. So that overall is what I would like to see in 0.22 if they were to come out with one. Still.
I almost did a video the other day, like what was because I saw I watched his video series too. You always pop up on my shorts. I need to get shorts off of my phone because I watch them too much. But I was thinking about doing a video about what I want from 0.22, and like as I was thinking, you said from a game developer's perspective, why wouldn't you just buff stuff? They should just buff stuff early on. Like, why wouldn't you raise the number up early on? As long as someone can approve that number you're tweaking isn't going to break things mathematical at the top end, then yes, just tweak those numbers a little bit. At this point, when I'm thinking about it, though, is when you think about like a balance overhaul, some of these abilities that are bad might be getting reworked. So to come in and number tweak them just temporarily, forget people playing that skill, and then suddenly the patch comes in 0.3 and the skill works very differently, scales differently, functions differently, like that confuses players and stuff. So from the game developer's perspective, that's the only excuse I can give them is like they have something coming soon that like completely negates that specific buff. But I agree, like there's just plenty of low performing skills that they could buff up, and that like what would get me back to 0.22 is only like a reason to level a new character. There's nothing they're going to, like, not going to drop new pinnacle content that I can go and slam out on all of my old builds. That sounds weird at this point. It would only have to be balance changes that brought me back to level the new character. Because at this point, I'm pretty checked out on the league. I just want to wait for either 0.22 for to have some balance changes to level new stuff that can't be leveled right now, or I'm just going to wait for 0.33, which I'm starting to kind of believe that's where we're at. Is GGG is waiting for 0.33. But since we're build makers, guys, let's talk about our favorite builds of this league. What is your favorite build of the league? I've played, I think, 13 different builds in Endgame right now. I want to say it's really only like 7 different builds because 3 of them were Wind Dancer variations and like a handful of them were Thorns variations. But for me, my favorite build was my Wind Dancer build. It was the first Reflect build that I've been saying since like Thorns came out in 0.1 that I think Thorns long term they're not going to look at it as a meme ability. Your Thorns is going to be something that enables builds like Crit does. It's like a stat that you can use to enable lots of different skills, and you don't just think of it as a Reflect style. And Wind Dancer was the first Reflect build that I was able to full clear all content. It could handle Simulacrum, it could handle all maps, it could one-shot tier 4 Zetch, it could one-shot tier 4 Arbiter, because you could apply the Wind Dancer was just the Reflect portion for mapping, and then you could just slot in any skill you wanted. I used it with Sunder, I used it with a couple other skills. It worked best with Sunder. But that was the build I was most excited about. I think it would be my Smitha Katava or Titan version. It's easy to default to a Titan just because like Titan makes every build better, but it was be one of those Wind Dancer Reflect builds. It was a lot of fun to make. They buffed Wind Dancer from 0.1 to 0.2. I had Wind Dancer builds in 0.1, but really the only way you could scale it was through Heralds. Then using Herald Cheese, of course, which Micho talked about earlier, which I'm glad that's gone. But they changed Wind Dancer in 0.2 to where it scales directly, not just off of gem skill level, but it scales off of your weapons damage, and you're able to just use any weapon in your character, and that melee damage or whatever would scale directly for your Wind Dancer damage, and that enabled it to, with the crazy chaos chain poison explosions, become both an excellent AoE and mapping tool, as Dead Rabbit ended up pushing. Like, I'm not an optimizer, I just do goofy stuff. Dead Rabbit, he took that build and he optimized it to the next level. He dominated Simulacrum tier 4. They made it a really good idle build. So they just like Wind Dancer just got unlocked in that build, and it ended up being not just like Wind Dancer. Wind Dancer slotted with a lot of different skills. He did it with Plague Bear. I did it with multiple skills. I've seen people do it on monks. I've seen people do it on mercenaries. It just ended up being a really versatile skill that I got to revisit from 0.1, and it's like the things I'm looking forward to with builds, right? Like when you revisit a build from a previous patch, these are the evolutions you're wanting to see. Like the build, like I've never expected Wind Dancer to evolve to the point it does, and these are the things I'm excited about for build making. So I guess, when you have those satisfying, I call them aha moments, where it's like suddenly something clicks and like the build evolves to a new point. And I got that a lot with like evolving that Wind Dancer build from 0.1 to 0.2.
And yeah, you're gonna have a big part in Wind Dancer probably being nerfed for next patch, since it's the 3rd most used skill in the game right now. Herald of Thunder with 59% of all players using Herald of Thunder. Lightning Spear 46%, and right behind Lightning Spear is Wind Dancer. 42% of all builds are using Wind Dancer right now.
I blame Lightning Spear. Lightning Spear. Yeah, it's their fault.
It is not just the best defensive layer right now, but also very, very good offensive layer right now. So if you're not using Wind Dancer, if you have the dexterity to use Wind Dancer, there's no reason not to use Wind Dancer. That's a good segue into my favorite build of the league as well. I am a little bit biased, obviously, because GGG for some weird reason decided to feature the build a few weeks ago,
Not
and
weird.
I was just laying in bed one morning, and I opened my phone and I saw, oh damn, there's a build showcase for Dead Rabbit. Oh wait, this is the official Path of Exile account. And the next 2 hours, I was just gobsmacked. So I am a little bit biased, but it is going to be my favorite build of the league, that the Mjölner Titan. It was obviously not something that I just completely invented myself. The whole process about that build was that before the 0.21 patch, there were already a few Mjölnir builds popping up on the Titan, especially. I've seen double Mjölnir Gemling. I think Jung Rowan did an Amazon with double Mjölnir, but they were all pretty underwhelming when it came mainly to single target damage. And the first version that I did on the build was with the Vertex Mask before the 0.21 patch. and that was based on first a Thai creator, I think Holiday was his name on YouTube, and also the Aste creator from the Korean scene. Really popularized the build, and I just did a slightly optimized version, like you just said. I mainly also, a lot of things that I do is optimizing builds and finding maybe new avenues to already existing builds. But then when the 0.21 patch hit, I actually went with the tech that I got from another build, which was the Deepest Tower tech, and I tried to do it on the Mjölner build, because most people that were playing the Mjölner build were saying that it's impossible to do without the Vertex Mask. And the Vertex Mask, as soon as I removed the Vertex Mask and could go for the Deepest Tower, the build just went into the stratosphere, because it not only made the mapping much easier, because obviously of all the extra damage, but the mapping was not a problem before. What it then had was just one weapon swap into the Deepest Tower setup, not even any gear switching, not any skill damage switching, and that just made the build an absolute insanely good boss killer as well. So yeah, I'm obviously biased since GGG decided to feature that build. I was super happy. I was kind of surprised they featured that build, because it's not a build that anyone can just pick up like that. It's something that I spent almost 2 days off stream, just like as soon as the update hit. I was just like, I still remember I was talking to you, Caltrops, on Discord, like giving you like small updates on what I was like thinking about.
It's a crazy feeling, man.
Yeah, and then it just kind of clicked, and it was amazing. I mean, we have 2 people right now in the call right here that have the 2 build showcases. No, there was a third build showcase.
Or the third
just now. The fight.
Miso got an honorable mention, so I like to throw that one out there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny you said that you were surprised it's your build. At least your build's good. The build they featured from me, it could only do Waystone 15s. It couldn't do Pinnacle content. I was so shocked when they featured that bad build.
I was surprised though, because it couldn't have been my build, because their Mjolnir wasn't Vald, so couldn't have been my build. I don't do it. If an item doesn't say corrupted on top on the bottom, it's not an item. I'm sorry, it just isn't.
That's fair. I'm a coward. I don't vow.
I don't volley. I don't volley either. Like, well, I mean, sometimes I do, but in general, I think it's the difference is that one of us on this call usually has a lot more currency than the other 2. Let's just say. It's probably the reason why the risks are a little bit lower when you can just buy another one and replace it, compared to us, which we've probably spent the entire league probably farming up that one item, and then
it means I go start a new character if I vow something bad.
Pretty much. But for me, my favorite build, again, Asta, that guy, crazy stuff.
Legend.
Yes, absolute legend. Because my
super
favorite
nice guy
build
as well.
Also, wait, have you talked to him?
Yes, I made sure I had someone in my chat who's also frequenting his chat a lot, who is Korean speaking. I actually had that person ask Aste a lot of stuff in Korean, because I kind of felt a little bit at a certain point. I like 3 builds in a row that were based on Aste, so I was kind of like, can you maybe ask him if that is if what I'm doing is kind of fine, and if he has anything to say, because I kind of felt bad, but I was just like, yeah, he's doing amazing builds, and you have to mention as well, he does a lot of optimizing as well. There was a lot of stuff that he got from other creators as well, and he then optimized. So that is just a normal process in this type of game space. But what I wanted to say is he's an amazing guy. He said to the other person, he said as well, like, it's all good. That is amazing to him. He wants this stuff to happen. He loves the PoE2 community, and he's just an amazing guy all around. Like, I wish I had the brain capacity, like 5% of his brain capacity, because he really finds extremely good stuff in already existing builds, or just start stuff from scratch. So whenever I came into his stream, I was the only English comment. I went hi, and he went out of Korean to say one sentence in English to me. So it was always very good.
That's
I think
awesome.
I think I can call him my friend, right, Aste?
I'm jealous. I want to be his friend too. And I mean, I
think
think that's
a friend of the pod then.
I think that's one of the coolest things about Path of Exile. Like, I feel like, or Path of Exile 2, I feel like in Path of Exile 1, at least I've heard these horror stories about people being like, oh, this guy stole my build, or like that guy stealing my build. And it really doesn't feel like that at all with PoE. We're all just out here trying to like make the coolest builds. We're like, if you take parts of my build and make it better, like that's super awesome. And like, it doesn't feel like there is that hostility or like, territorialism with your, oh, this is my build and that guy went out and stole my build. So I think
not
that's
yet,
super
at least.
cool. At least not yet. Hopefully we keep it that way. But yeah, Asta guys, if you guys are looking for cool builds, his stuff is all in Korean, unfortunately, but you could make your way around with it with a little bit of work. But that guy makes some awesome builds, because my favorite build of this league was also based off of Asta's build. Which my favorite archetype this league has been the cast on freeze voltaic mark Herald of Thunder Cascade, which has been super fun. But it was a build that was using that, which is a Gathering Storms Flicker Strike Invoker. Using that Herald of Thunder voltaic mark tech, because it just looks so pretty. It looks so good. It makes, if you have it built correctly, it will destroy your computer. It'll destroy your graphics card. But it's worth it. It just looks so good. It's so fun to play. The build one shots bosses. It clears maps really fast. Flies all over the place. Overall, just like the most visually appealing build that I've seen and I've played this league. And I played a lot of good builds this league that use that, but also, I played the Whirlwind, the Whirling Slash build, which was also really good. But this build for me definitely takes the cake. And yeah, Deepest Tower, absolutely OP. I'd say like Lightning Spear or Tangle Tongue is probably the most OP unique in the game right now. But I think following up in this number 2 spot is probably Deepest Tower, in my opinion. It is absolutely.
Let's save a low life topic for next week. Then we'll put that on the list for next week's show. I think that's a good discussion. Because I agree. I don't know if it's Deepest Tower necessarily, but low life builds and like Deepest Tower makes it way better. But low life in general is very dominant. Like I felt I was avoiding Deepest. I could have made more of my builds Deepest Tower builds, and they would have been better. And I was actively like avoiding doing more low life builds. That's how good that felt.
Yep.
I guess I shouldn't start that topic, but after also saying let's not talk about Deepest Tower. So, but we can transition straight into Tangle Tongue and Crit then, because this is a topic I've wanted to happen for a while. It came to me like before we had the podcast going. A viewer came to me and he said that he thinks crit builds are OP and he thinks they should be nerfed. And I started thinking about that, and it eventually led to me actually have a fully edited video that I was going to upload to my channel, but then we got the podcast going, and I ended up canceling because it felt weird to upload that video and then talk about it with you guys. So I just want to set the premise and see your guys' thoughts on it. So yeah, that's the general topic is crit overpowered? And there's a lot of ways you can identify this. One, when you look at PoE Ninja, you look at the heat map for it, it is fairly telling. Now heat maps can be a little inconclusive just because like you have so many people playing one build, and if that one top build happens to be a crit build, you're going to see that heat map lit up at general. But the general heat map shows that almost a majority of builds are going crit builds. It is very specific builds that don't go crit builds. And it is for a lot of reasons. One of the main reasons being some of the crit nodes on the right side of the tree are just some of the best passives in the game. You can just take a couple of those crit nodes and that will scale your entire build for crit. You won't need to take any more crit nodes in general, and you can like somehow like weave around that. There happens to also just be crit everywhere on the passive tree. Every single area on the tree has critical strike. Versus a lot of the other passive types. If you look at Ignite, if you look at Poison, if you look at Bleed, if you look up any other archetype, Lightning and Cold, compared to Critical Strike, there are some, like Poison, you can only get access to on the far right side of the screen. There's no other Poison stuff. Bleed, only in the top left and the bottom center. Versus Crit, which can go everywhere. And then you add on the fact that Crit makes a lot of these other side things better. because most ailments right now scale off of how hard you hit. You know what makes you hit harder? A lot harder? Crit. So if Ignite and Poison and all this stuff are scaling off of how hard you crit, oftentimes, or how hard you hit, oftentimes crit is enabling these other archetypes even more. Then you just add on the fact that we have some of the best uniques in the game. Like, even if you remove Tangle Tongue, you have Wrath Pipe, that offhand mace, or the offhand mace, the offhand
Focus.
Focus, thank you. That just pales with any caster crit build perfectly. So just in general, crit, I don't like. Do you guys think it is too overpowered? Do you think it is in too much abundance on the tree? Or do you think it is other things that need to be buffed more? Because when I still think, even after everything I just listed, I still don't know if crit is necessarily the problem. Maybe it's a little too accessible, and maybe, like, obviously, Tangle Tongue, like, I don't think anyone is going to disagree. It is insanely overpowered, at least for an easily accessed unique. It should be a chase unique for how good it is. Yep. It is so strong. But like, ignoring the unique aspects of it, do you guys think crit is too powerful or do you think other things are just not as easy to scale? I know it's kind of like a broad topic because you have so much with like all of these Ignite scaling off of crit and stuff. Like, what do you think needs to change here? What do you think it is actually a problem or not? Let's start with Miso.
Well, before we even hop into that, I just wanted to bring up the heat map on the screen that you were talking about. As you can see here, all of the ones that are highlighted green, the deeper green it is, more and more used compared to the other ones. And you can see, as Cal mentioned, that on the right-hand side, everything is lit up over here. And this is where pretty much all the crit exists. Now, I think there is a little bit of a bias in a sense, because over here is all the armor nodes and the strength nodes, which are not really the best. And up here is the evasion ES stuff, which is where mostly people will be making their builds in. But even when you're playing the more like armor ES side of things, right, you're still going to be scaling crit. You're still going to be making that your main, area of growing your damage and making your damage stronger. But I would say that in terms of the crit conversation, I do think that crit is extremely powerful right now. But at the same time, I don't know if it necessarily would need a nerf, because I think rather than crit being overpowered, it's just more of non-crit builds can't really scale that well. I think that in Path of Exile 1, both crit builds and not crit builds are, there are viable options. But in Path of Exile 2 right now, crit is the only way to scale damage, just because there isn't as much scaling and opportunity to grow your damage to big numbers compared to crit. You can definitely go both ways of nerfing crit or buffing the other stuff. I think both of them are fine. But I think that if you think about it this way, right? I think that right now, if you take out every single crit build in the game and only use non-crit builds, there's probably only a handful that can actually clear every single piece of content comfortably. So because of that, I don't think it's that crit is overpowered per se, because it feels like crit is the baseline for what you want to be using to actually clear all the content. It's just that non-crit builds are just not very good. There's probably, like I said, a couple of them that can actually clear everything. So I think it's more about buffing non-crits rather than, nerfing crit itself. Though Tangle Tongue does, I think, need a change for sure.
I'm definitely on the same boat. I think crit is always going to be a staple piece in games like this to scale damage. I don't think it's in a state where you would say now it is something that would need to be nerfed in any sort of form. It's kind of the same vein as the passive tree as it stands right now. We have a little bit of a two-class society on the passive tree just right now. The right side, and in point 1, for example, a lot of people were talking about the top side. In point 1, it was a lot of people were saying the top side is really good, everything else is just bad. Right now, it shifted from being from the right side to the left side. It's just that we have so many options and so many good builds on the right side than compared to the left side, which is kind of only Titan builds to use, Resolute Technique, and most of the builds that are using Resolute Technique are also utilizing the Deepest Tower for some reason, because they cannot scale damage as well as critical hit chance or critical base build. So what do they need? They need scaling through Deepest Tower. And that, I think, perfectly shows that it's just a lack of options when it comes to that certain thing. What I would use as an example as well is the build I already mentioned before here, the build that I used as a league starter, which was the Essence Drain Contagion Lich. That is due to the dot damage being not scaled by crit in any form, because dots cannot crit, and most of the build damage was based on the Essence Drain dot. You could not scale that build over a certain point. The only scaling for the damage you had in this build was spell damage, chaos damage, and the level of the skill gem. That was all. If there would be a reason, or if there would be a possibility to scale this build through crit, and you could go even further and even further, I would probably still be playing that build from time to time. But it just hit a ceiling where I was just like, yeah, okay, I need to transition into something else now, because I cannot scale to the point where I wanted to scale now. And I just think this shows perfectly that crit is, in my opinion, in a very valid stage. It's not in need of nerfs or whatever, because it feels very good when you are actually playing a crit build. It feels very good to actually scale damage, and you have a certain thing to look out for at all times. And it is something that is, in my opinion, very, very normal in like build making and stuff. It's a normal damage scaler. We just need more options, I think. Like I said, we have a few options on the left side with Resolute Technique. We have the Deepest Tower or whatever. It just needs more. We just need more archetypes that scale damage without having crit. But at the same time, I think it will always be a very, very big staple piece, because every single gear piece in the game, like any bow, anything, any quarterstaff, any hammer, it's all based on crit. Everything has a base crit chance.
Yeah. I think I agree overall. I do think crit does need a slight nerf. At least crit damage bonus. I find myself, no matter what build as long as it's not a Resolute Technique build like you were saying, I find myself almost always anointing something that gives me crit. Almost always, unless I have to anoint something that's giving me super defensives. I look at in a passive like Cooked, that's giving you 60% critical strike bonus, which that is a lot, people. That's a lot of damage. For like, what is it, 15% like less nothing? Like it does nothing to your defensives for how much damage you're getting. There's a lot of passives like that on the tree that are just, I'm not saying it should punish you more, but crit has a lot of passives like that that are big gains for either no loss or no loss, or very little loss. And I just find myself like, there's the one the one passive, what's it called? Storm Cooked, where like it's the crit elemental damage one.
Storm Charged, yeah.
Yeah, Storm Charge, thank you. Like I just find like myself, like no, like it is so hard to want to build defensives via passives, because when you're doing a crit build, you can really scale almost purely through the like, at least when my builds, right? If it's crit build, I can almost scale entirely through the passive tree, and then all of my defenses comes from gear and some other aspects of how I'm playing. Crit can carry my build's damage exclusively, and I think that comes a lot from just how accessible crit damage bonus is. Like like we just mentioned anoints, didn't even mention the fact that jewels, you can get 20% crit damage bonus on all of your jewels. So a lot of these paths that you're seeing on the heat map, they're taking several jewel nodes along the way, and a lot of times it's going to be like maybe a Prism of Belief, maybe a Megalomaniac. Sometimes it'll be something to put. What's the one that lets you put passes across the tree near the
nothing.
From Nothings, yeah. So sometimes you see From Nothings, but you're usually using From Nothings to get more crit stuff, or get like the toxic, like the increased ailment damage stuff. Like, it's everything just goes to crit with most of my builds. And even when I'm not like, yeah, it's just the best way to enable builds, like you said. So I think Miso said it best, that crit feels like, outside of the outliers like Tangleton, you both kind of said it, crit seems like maybe the floor they should be looking at for all of the other play styles. They should be trying to get crit more on par. My concern with that is since crit directly scales all of those things, that's such a dangerous road because it's still at some point you're going to be like, no matter how high I'm scaling my ignite, as long as it's scaling off of that initial hit, you're going to feel the need to want to always build crit. So I feel like at some point they're going to be a crossroad where at least one of these ailments has to stop scaling off of hit damage at least as hard as it can, as it is, because that's where like I don't see how you like. I don't know. I just feel like you're almost always going to want to build crit.
Yeah, that's kind of goes with what I was saying about like it's always going to be stable. I think that is to be expected that crit has or like critical hit chance, and any game that it's not even just ARPGs, just any game will always it's just a staple. It's just always going to be one. And like you said as well, there are some notes on this tree that if they stay this way, it is always going to be gonna stay that way. Like stuff like you said, cooked, for example. But like just if you could just go barbaric strength or vulgar methods, that's probably the two best. Like reduce like increase mana cost and reduce mana cost for 35% critical hit chance, 10 strength, 45 critical damage bonus, and 10 strength. Like that's just there's not going to be a node that is non-crit based that is as good as that. So yeah, we just need more options, I think, and it's time will show. I think it's kind of maybe a little bit of a crutch right now because the game is in a state where it's not going to be too complicated, and I think they are doing a good thing of not implementing too many mechanics like this in a game that is still in a stage like this. I think it might just be a crutch right now. It is just put for the example, like just put crit in there. We need this damage scaler. We think about everything else once we have the ability to do so. So it might just be a crutch right now. So we might get even more. We might not for a while. I think it's in a good state right now. We just need more options.
Any final thoughts, Miso?
I mean, you guys pretty much covered it.
All right, let's move on to our build of the. It's titled Build of the Week right now. It's not Build of the Week, but we're just gonna. It's some form of build creator showcase from the community. We want to, as smaller creators, the community is constantly giving back to us, not just through like, us creators reaching out to each other, wanting to collab. Bigger creators have all wanted to collab with us and stuff, but through the community itself. None of us make our builds 100% ourselves. No one does that. You've always learned something from someone else. There's always just little snippets that you take from someone else, and as build creators, it's impossible to avoid seeing comments that push us in certain directions, or, when we're streaming, we see advice from people, or like we talked about earlier, as other creators, we are encouraging each other to do well. Like, there was no animosity between me and Rabbit between him doing the Wind Dancer build. We were encouraging each other. I was excited when I saw what he did with it, right? We want to give back to... No, never mind. We have animosity.
There's a lot of animosity here. Speak for yourself. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah. He's jealous that I was ahead of him. It's okay. But it's really just like, this is a collaboration. No one makes the builds themselves, and we learn from the community. And yeah, we're just excited. Like, we all get excited when we see these builds because it means we get to apply something we learn from them to a future build of ours. It might not be next league, but it might be down the road. So that's the plan with this. And Miso, since well, I'll let you take the point this right now because I don't know how you're going to be displaying it on your screen. But did you want to start with the Q Fun build? Because I don't know how you're displaying it on stream.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna pull it up on just like screen share the YouTube video. But okay. Q Fun I think I don't think it's the build I'm showcasing.
Okay, I can talk about it then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you just gonna play the video on stream? Or are you pulling?
Yeah, I'm just gonna pull it up in the background, basically.
Okay. Cool. Perfect. Okay, so this is a Caltrops build that both myself and Dale Rabbit ended up stumbling upon a few weeks ago. Now, Caltrops builds are really cool in a lot of ways. I've tried making them work many different times. There's a cool aspect of Caltrops where it is a spirit gem that you can wear multiple of. And you can put many different support gems into each support gem of it, and you'll get the effect of all of those support gems across all of your Caltrops. So you're able to just wear several different spirit gems of Trail of Caltrops to get access to as many possible support gems as possible. So that's why you see him in his Path of Building. You'll see him using several different spirit gems for it. Allows you to just get access to all of the best support gems to amplify his damage, handle AoE clearance stuff. But what's really cool about it is he is utilizing two specific uniques, which for me, when I'm a build creator, this is the stuff I get excited about, is when you have these two pieces of a puzzle that click well together that make the build transform. He is using the Ab Eterno boots. These make dodge rolls avoid all hits. Normally, you cannot dodge roll ground effect explosions. They will kill you, such as like the Arbiter's ground effect. If you saw in the clip, he was actually dodge rolling the Arbiter's big fire infernal that would one-shot you most of the time. This allows him to dodge roll that. And then those boots come with the downside of every time you dodge roll, you get slower, which makes this build horrible. That's why I gave up on this build. But he came up with combining it with Queen of the Forest, which your modifiers to speed no longer apply to your character. So you're no longer getting that downside of the negative move speed, allowing you to just really dodge roll around. So it's the combination of the fact that he's stacking a bunch of spirit gems to just really abuse the fact that, I don't know if it's a broken mechanic or not, a bug in the game, but you do get access to every single support gem in Trail of Caltrops across all of the Caltrops that come across. So it's just, you're super amping it via that way. But then, of course, like, as you can see, he's pretty unkillable. It's a really impressive build. You saw him like literally dodge rolling on Arbiter. So I don't know. It's Caltrops. It's fun. It's creative. And again, for me as a build maker, I don't know about you guys, but when it's not just about like having that one build unique that makes the build work, but like it's that combination of uniques, this puzzle. It's like these two uniques working together make it to where you can just dodge roll freely, and you know, the abuse of Trail of Caltrops lead to just, it's not a play style everyone will want to play. It's probably something I could only play for maybe 5 to 10 minutes at a time, but it's really cool. That's how, and I love these kind of builds. Rabbit, I mean, you saw the build, you saw it actually before I did. What are your thoughts on it? I cannot hear you right now.
I think I think the first time I actually saw a Caltrops build was when I was doing the Sekima race event with the farmer. I think that was the first time I actually got introduced, the first time for forever, for like a Caltrops build like that, because someone who actually made it into the final was playing a true just Caltrops dodge roll build, and that was the first time I actually went like, oh damn, this could be incredible. Why I didn't really go for that kind of thing is, and why I didn't really go for like a Temporalis build for this league, just playing it myself, is because I just I for some reason I just like the playstyle. I couldn't. It's not fun.
I agree.
I could never do all the just like spacebar. They probably have the dodge roll on a different button. I hope, at least for the sake of their left thumb. But yeah, it's just super creative. This is what, in my opinion, Path of Exile 2 build making is all about. It's just about finding ways, exactly that thing about the boots that make your dodge roll better, just to keep it simple like that, make the dodge roll better, but have the downside of, people always harp on the downsides, by the way. That's also something we could maybe talk about at a later stage, because or in another podcast, that is, because people are always hating a little bit on the whole downside thing, that GGG has a lot of stuff where, or Path of Exile 2 has a lot of stuff where it is the upside and then the downside. But I think if everything only has upside, I think those kind of builds would never see the light of day, because people don't really see the point in, I have to find a solution now for this downside. In this case, the lesser movement speed after dodge rolling a bunch. And they found a solution, and that is how a creative build like that gets made. So yeah, it's amazing. I think it's everything that is right with Path of Exile 2 build making.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've talked about it as well with the whole downside thing in the past. Like, I totally agree. Like, sometimes you might think that I would say there's a sometimes where a downside maybe is too much, but I do agree and like the as a build maker, and I've talked about this on Blaze's podcast as well, that sometimes these downsides really are there to allow you build makers to stretch their mind to be like, okay, there's this one downside here. How do I deal with it? Instead of having just like a positive where it's like, I'm just going to slap this on to any other build and just make it better.
Yeah, I call it overcoming walls, like the friction of build making. It is not fun to me when I can I call it farting my way through the game and everything just dies. Like you're not even thinking about like I hate. It's not that I avoid meta builds. It's I don't want the game to be solved for me by using that skill. And a lot of times OP things end up doing that. To me, I enjoy hitting a wall and having to sit there and tinker, and then like a certain tinkering ends up spiking my damage by 200%, and now I can clear from white maps to red maps. Then I hit my next wall. Like I call it hitting walls, and that's why I enjoy the off meta builds. Is that you oftentimes have to use uniques like that to solve these problems. Like it's problem solving, and it like Dead Rabbit and you both said, like this is what Path of Exile 2 is at its finest for me, especially as a build maker. It is this because I have tried Trail of Caltrops twice now, because it's like it's got the Thorns modifier to it, so obviously I'm just going to like at least tinker with it. I've tried it on my Tactician, which it kind of pairs well with the Tactician. You have the 50% reduced spirit cost reduction, so you can get a lot more Trail of Caltrops in. You can actually do this build on a lot of different things, but it's really cool. And I was always just running into these like problems with where it's like too much friction with it, and like these are the solutions that you look at them like individually, like you said, and you would roll your eyes at it like, why would I ever use that? And like right here, like, and that's why it exists. You may not understand why this niche, really weird, unique it was added. It might not be added. GGG might not even know why it's added yet. They're waiting to see what other people do with it. So not every unique has to be this obvious like home run with positives. But yeah, not that was horribly bad, but yes, it's really cool. Like these are the things I look for. And yeah, Miso, you said this is your friend's build, or
for the next one for my build.
Yeah, I was just clarifying. Was it your friend, or is it like a viewer? What is? Yeah.
I mean, he was a. So my build is gonna be Gia's Chrono Stormtrooper build, and you can call him a friend, we can call him an acquaintance, somebody I watch. But so the build I was talking about earlier, Asta's build, right? Actually, part of the build, I didn't actually form the initial part of the build from Asta's build. I actually formed my Gathering Storms Invoker, the Gathering Storms part, from Gia's Gathering Storm Invoker, and then I combined it with Asta's and then made edits to it. But Gia is a YouTuber who has made some really cool builds, and this build in particular, well, also Gia, give some background. He, like you were talking about earlier, he hangs out on my stream every now and then. Cool dude, great guy. Definitely check out his YouTube channel, which, by the way, all these builds that we're talking about, when the YouTube video comes out, I'm going to be leaving a link to all the builds in the description. So if you guys are watching this on the VOD, just go down there and there will be links to all these builds. But Gia, and on YouTube, his name is AwesomeGI0, has this build called the Chrono Stormtrooper Orb of Storms build, which is super, super cool. It combines... It's so cool. Two uniques that are really, really interesting that make the build work. And I'm just going to show you how it looks and how it works. But it really is just using Orb of Storms and Shock Burst round to do a ton of damage. Now, this build is not by any means easy to play, unfortunately. But basically, that's what happens. He pops the 2 Orbs of Storms, and it does a ton of damage, because Orb of Storms procs a lightning bolt every single time you use an a lightning skill, right? So Shock Burst rounds shoots extremely fast. As a result, he has 2 Orb of Storms that just does a ton of burst damage, and you can use this during mapping as well. But unfortunately, it is, like I said, it's a very, very high skill cap build, not just because you have to press quite a few buttons to be able to get it to start going, but it leaves you at really, really low life when you're getting your moves, basically your combo setup. So before he starts, and it's not like the smoothest mapper either, but it's really cool. But as you can see in the video, his health drops down every single time. Now, he does use Mind Over Matter, which helps out, but it is a very complicated build that requires quite a few button presses. He calls himself he is a fighting game player, so he's used to all these, like, you know, extremely tight inputs and like complicated button presses. So it's kind of his style of build. But it's really, really cool, and it takes advantage of two unique items, which are the Burden of Shadows and the Indigon uniques, which basically kind of work together with each other very well, because Indigon makes it so that you have increased cost of skills, but also increases the let's see. So it does the increased cost of skills, and then this one makes it so that skills gain 1% of damage as chaos damage per 3 life cost, and then you have skills that cost mana get converted to life. So basically the combo of these two skills just scales the damage like crazy and gives them huge damage on top of this really cool playstyle. And if you're looking at the video, he is shooting away from the monsters, but you don't actually have to shoot away from monsters. It's just kind of a stylistic thing that he thinks is just funny to do, but it's such a cool build, such a cool skill. I really think it's super fun.
That looks, when I was checking it out, when you were first sending that into the group, I was like, damn, this looks fucking crazy. This is once again something that is super, super creative, super, super good. But yeah, it looks a little bit squishy, but it's just, I've never seen anything close to that. So that was definitely a new one.
I remember seeing it, I think, on Reddit, and just like the way you're moving like through the map, like. Yeah, I love those kind of builds. You know, people get too hopped up on like every build having to like full clear all content and like not being, you know, or having like 10k life and stuff. Some builds you have to just put into this build is going to hit a wall at some point, but this wall enables me to show some really cool techniques, and that's exactly what that build does. I mean, it's like peak flashy. Like, it's not like completely like screen exploding PC bricking, but it is like when you watch it, you're like, oh, that's cool. And like if that was a meta build, you know, everyone would be playing it. You know, just by like how cool it looks to play. And those are the coolest builds.
I think the coolest part about it was he was actually talking about how he might actually league start it next league, because it actually be a league starter according to him. So if you have the hands for it
with the Indigons,
well, you don't have to use the Indigon. It's just it scales the damage basically, right? It's one of those builds where you can do it without the uniques, but with the uniques is what allows him to basically do the huge burst damage that he did to Zesh. So he said he's going to try to league start next league. So in terms of funding, probably not that expensive to start off, but of course, if you want to scale it, you're going to want to put more money into it. But in terms of like who's going to play it, I definitely wouldn't recommend it for a new player, probably an experienced player. But for anybody who's thinking about it, check it out, because it might be viable as a league starter they can use next league.
Okay. Just really quick, I'll let you make the ultimate call on it, Rabbit. Since we're going to do a Deepest Tower build next week, are you okay holding off with this build till next week, since it's also using Deepest Tower? We're doing a Deepest Tower discussion next week, so I don't know if it might you feel like that one. Okay, cool. So we'll just do that build next week. Okay, well that's all our topics then, guys. I thought this was awesome. Obviously, I feel like we could talk about PoE 2 for 100 more hours, so that's why we started a podcast. We will be doing this every 2 weeks, you guys. It'll always be live on Miso's channel on Twitch and YouTube, and you can find the VOD there in case, you know, times don't work out to you. I think our plan right now is 2 p.m. Eastern every other Thursday. There will be moments where we feel the need to do like an emergency episode where it's like surprise patch notes, or like as we're coming into a league, you know, we'll be wanting to talk about the game every week and like at league starts and stuff. So there will be an increase in frequency, but in general, expect 2 a month. so you won't ever have these huge droughts of no content. But I had a blast with this podcast. If you don't know me, my name is Caltoric. You can follow me on YouTube. I do sometimes stream on YouTube at or on Twitch at Cal underscore Torak, but I don't really consider myself still a streamer yet. I stream occasionally. I mainly consider myself a YouTube. I like making videos. I'll pump out way more videos than I stream. So if you really want to follow me, you could follow me specifically on YouTube. Rabbit, go ahead.
Hello. I stream on Twitch TV, Dead Rabbit. That's it.
Yeah. I stream on twitch.tv/MeSoHero, which is where you are at right now. Also, YouTube channel. I post Path of Exile builds. Recently, I haven't really been playing too much Path of Exile. Mostly been playing other games. Though I am doing a SSF journey right now. Well, another SSF journey that I'm doing with Corrupting Cry Warbringer that I'm playing. So I usually do both Path of Exile. Well, these days, Path of Exile and a little bit of Uma Musume at the end. So super fun game. Yeah, check me out there. And I just YouTube and Twitch.
And just to end on, if you guys, have any feedback for us, let us know down in the comments. But specifically, if you are a creator or a fan of a build creator, give them a shout out in the comments. We are looking for builds to feature. We are obviously watching the community like a hawk for more builds, and we watch the subreddits and stuff. But if there's something that goes under our eyes, we're gonna want to hear about it, and we might end up getting featured. So just spam those comments down below with your favorite build of the league, and over the next couple weeks as we're going into 0.3, we might feature one of those builds. But thank you everybody for watching. Shout out to these guys here for just dealing with me the last few weeks as we got this set up. It was a lot of hype and excitement going up today, but I love doing this, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Have a good one.
Peace.